Next up, we are going to discuss arrays, and I'm not talking about asking your boss for more money. Haha, bad joke there. We are talking about arrays. So what is an array? An array stores into a variable multiple elements of the same type. Let's have a look at an example here, an example of how we could craft an array. We start off with our type, so this is an integer. You can see we have whole numbers down here. Same thing, full numbers, whole numbers. If it was a float as our type, then we would have decimal place numbers or numbers with decimal places. We could have a string or we could have any other sort of type in here. We use the square brackets to denote that this is an array. And then we have a variable name, as we've done before. This variable is going to store these particular numbers, these particular values in this variable, and it will store them at specific locations. So at location 0, and all good programming starts counting from 0, and you can think of it of how many steps is it away from this initial value in here. So this is 0 steps away, and this is 2 steps away at number 5. So each of these has a position. If we wish to get access to our number 9 in here, then we're referring to, within our array, odd numbers array, the location number 4. So back into Unity, let us open up our adventure script here. Open up adventuregame.cs. We're going to do a little example of an array so we can see how it works first of all. So underneath my text component and starting state up the top here, I will add an integer that is a, whoops, wrong brackets, that is a array. So int and then our square brackets, odd numbers. We're basically typing out what we saw on our screen just a moment ago, equals curly braces, space 1, comma, space 3, 5, 7, 9, and then end with semicolon. So this is the exact thing we saw previously, int odd numbers 1 through to 9. So we have declared our array, and we've also initialized our array. We could have stopped at this point just here and said, ignore all the stuff down below, and said, there we go, we have declared an array of type integer called odd numbers, and then later on we will say what the values of this variable is, of this array is, but for now we're going to start off by declaring and initializing in one step. This is all code that we're just playing around with at the moment. We're not going to use this in our final game, but I'm using this to illustrate how arrays work just within our current script in here. So we have that. Now let's go down to our start method and just add an extra line, our start method. Let's print out to our console, let's print out number 7 from the array. Okay, let's go through this together. Debug.log, open brackets. Now we don't need our quotation marks because we're not printing out a string, we're printing out our variable. So we type in odd numbers, and then within that we open our square brackets and we say number 3, or we add number 3 and then semicolon. So what this is saying is print out debug.log odd numbers variable and whatever is at position number 3. Now we're counting from 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3. This will be number 7 if all going to plan. So save over into Unity, hit play. Look at the console and it should say 7 as it does. Fantastic. Likewise, if we wanted to print out a string, then let's change up. Here's a mini challenge for you again. Change this array from odd numbers to days of the week, and then use debug.log to print out, we'll say, Tuesday into the console. So there's a mini challenge for you. Pause the video now and take on that mini challenge. Okay, welcome back. Why is it a mini challenge and not a challenge? Well, I guess because I don't have a slide for it. Therefore, it's a mini challenge. Okay, so instead of this being an int, we will change it to a string. So it's type string. We will call it days of... Actually, I'm going to show you a trick here. I'll undo that. In Visual Studio, if we click on the name of something and we go Control RR, so double R, it's I'm guessing it's Command RR on the Mac. Apologies, I don't know exactly what that is on the Mac, but on PC, it is Control RR. That will allow us to rename all of the things that are called odd numbers. So I'm going to type in days of the week. And you can see it's naming here and it's also renaming there because it knows this is one and the same. So that's a neat little trick there. You can click apply. And instead of our numbers, we're going to change this. We need our quotation marks for each of these. We'll say Monday. I'll just type it the abbreviated version so we're not here forever. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I'm going to leave it at that. You know the remaining 3 days of the week, but I'll save ourselves the extra 30 seconds of typing that out. And then what were we going for? Tuesday. So this is position 0 and this is position 1. So we will change our reference here to 1, save, back over into Unity, give our script a moment to compile, click on play, and then all going to plan, it will say Tuesday. Yes, it does. Excellent. So that's the usage of arrays. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to remove our example that we've put in here for now. We don't need that for what we're doing. Remove that and remove our debug down here. Arrays are super useful if we want to store multiple things in one variable. And what is a use case for that? Well, we're about to do a use case for that. We're about to implement that in our game. I'm going to jump over into state. And within state, what we want to do is have a variable which stores all of our next states. What do I mean by that? At the moment, we have starting state. Let's go ahead and create 2 more next states. So right click up to create state. What will we call this? We'll call this room 1. Not a very good name for now. We're going to go through and create our actual story pretty soon, but for now we're doing this as a placeholder, room 1, and I'll create a second one. Right click, create state. Call this room 2. Okay, we have starting state, we have room 1 and room 2. Room 1, I'll just write a little bit of text in here. I am in room 1. And then room 2 will say, okay, this looks like room 2. This is placeholder, so feel free to type whatever you like in there, just so we've got something. If we end up, printing this out on the screen, we know that it's accurately portraying the right particular state we're going for. So we now have 3 states, starting state, room 1 state, and room 2 state. These are assets. These are our scriptable object assets, and we have these 3. So if we wanted to say from starting state, your options are to go to room 1 or room 2. We wish to store that information in a variable that has the concept of next state. And when we look over here in states, what that will require is that we serialize a variable called next states, and then we create a new public method where we are returning the next states. And that is going to be your challenge. This is a little bit of a deeper challenge, so feel free to stop the video, take time to look through what we've worked through previously, have a look at how arrays work, and have a good think about it. I'm going to give you a few hints, so if you don't want the hints, feel free to pause the video and dive in as soon as you're ready. The summary of what we're trying to do is create a public method, as we've previously done in here. This was our previous public method we've already created. When called, returns an array of next states. So this one, when it was called, it returned a string. So this variable is a string, and the return type was a string. What we're looking to do is return an array of next states. So the type is states. And here are the hints. If you're ready, if you think that's enough information, then pause the video and jump in now. First hint is serialized array of type. So I'm going to change on the fly. This should be serialize an array, not serialized. So serialize an array of type state called next states. So that's the first thing. We're declaring our variable, next states, and we're serializing that, and it's of type array. And the public method that returns next states is called getNextStates. And the return type needs to be the same as the variable type. Okay, so there are your clues. Jump in, give that a shot, and I'll see you back in here in a moment for our solution. Okie dokie, our first step here is to serialize a variable. So serialize field, it's of type state, because we're looking for states that will be within our array. We denote it as an array with our square brackets, and we'll call this next states. because we want to know what are all the next states that could come after whatever our current state is. Our current state is starting state. Now for creating our method, down the bottom of our script here, public, what is this? It's a state, and we need our square brackets because it's an array. It's an array of type state, space. We will call this get next states. No parameters, so open and close parentheses, curly braces, and we will type return. And what are we returning? Well, we're returning our variable, our array of type state. So we're returning next states. And then we'll save that. So that's creating a state array called next states that is being returned when we call get next states from our code. One last step we'll do in this video. So well done if you got that challenge correct. Well done if you got close to that as well. We'll do one last step in here, and that is jump back into Unity, have a look at an update that we should now see. If we click on any of these asset files, our scriptable object files here, we can see that we now have a field called next states. It says size 0. This is our array in here. And because we've created as a serialized array, that means we can dynamically add, just by dragging and dropping, we can add into our array. We don't need to define all the different aspects of our array in our code. We can define the aspects of our array straight here in the inspector. Now, the size, we could say, is 4, for example. And that will mean we're looking for 4 elements of our array that will be the next states. We know we have 2, so we can type in here 2. That will give us 2, element 0 and element 1. Room 1 we drag into element 0, and room 2 we drag into element 1. Again, we could click on the selector, and then we can choose room 1 or 2 from there. Now, another even easier way to do this, I'm just going to change this back to 0. While clicking on starting state, I can come up to the inspector. There's a little lock, very little lock up in the top right here. If you click on that, that will lock the inspector. So now, no matter what else I click on, the inspector will remain locked to this starting state. That'll allow me to easily click on things without bouncing and going to a different location. If I had the lock off and I'm like, okay, cool, now I want to grab room 2, oops, now I'm on room 2 as on the inspector, and I want to stay the inspector on starting state. So while that lock is on, I can click on room 1, hold down shift, room 2, drag both of those over to where it says next states, let go, and it will automatically size it to 2 and add those 2 elements into my array. This is pretty handy if you have lots and lots of things that you want to add to an array. You can just go bloop in one spot and you don't have to select them one at a time. Make sure you unlock the inspector so that we don't accidentally stay on that locked on that asset file. Now we can have a look here, and we have our story in our starting state. We have our next states that we're going to go to using our array, and in the next video, we're going to call the method that we've just created, our getNextStates method, and we are going to give the player the option of going to the next state or the next part of our story. So great work in this video, well done. Hopefully arrays is making sense. Again, we will be using these things over and over throughout this course, so if it's only just settling in a little bit into your head, no problem. This will get crystal clear the longer we go throughout this course and the more we work through the content. So great work, and I'll see you in the next video.